Hey, hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming along. It's lovely to see you all here and really grateful for you tuning in. So welcome back to the British Canoeing Paddlecast. I'm Etienne Stott. I'm a paddler till I die, a proud environmental activist, a campaigner, a rebel and an Olympic champion, which I sometimes forget, but I think that's still pretty cool, hopefully. So yeah, look, the world has struggled on since the last set of paddlecasts. It's been tough out there. You know, some things have gotten worse, some things have gotten better. I'm a sort of glass half full person, but I don't know how it's been for you. I hope you've managed to keep going despite all the challenges and perhaps found some nice bits and pieces going on for you as well. So it's been a tough winter for sure. And now we're just starting to see the nights are getting shorter. The evenings are starting to call us, and perhaps there might be a little bit of paddling on the horizon as the lockdown eases. So that's why we're bringing the Paddlecast out again, just to keep you entertained in the run up to a full return to paddling and getting out on the river. So look, it's going to be lovely. This next few weeks, we're going to have a really cool series of podcasts coming out. We're going to have all sorts of things going on. It's going to be really good, interesting people from across the kind of canoeing paddle sports community. We're going to be covering topics around access and things like that. But then also we've got a she paddle stuff, a bit about the health of our rivers and waterways, the Tokyo Games, and all sorts. So please keep coming along because we're going to keep you entertained for sure. So it's great for you to be here tonight, and thank you if you are watching on a catch-up or catching up on a paddlecast. It's really good to have you coming along, even if you're not here for the live show tonight. Well, we've got lots of hopefully new people coming in to listen, and welcome back the old viewers from the last time round. It's really nice to have you back. So thank you so much. So yeah, as always, please feel free to comment, send questions in to the social media channel that you're connecting with us here tonight, and we'll do our best to answer and chum you along and kind of interact a little bit as well if we can. So yeah, tonight we've got a really interesting episode coming up. It's going to be super cool. We're joined by Lucy Siegle, and Lucy is an awesome person. She's an author, a journalist and a TV presenter, and specialising in environmental issues. So she's also a paddler, which I think is super cool. That's why I've got her on here. She's a trustee of our good friends Surfers Against Sewage, who are an amazing organisation, and she's organiser of a charity paddle, which is where our paths crossed for the first time. So first of all, welcome Lucy to the Paddlecast. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so delighted to be here. How can you forget that you are an Olympian?
Well, I tell you, one of the things that scares me is it's going to be 10 years next year. That's going to be like a decade. But for me, no, it's still quite real, but it's also
timeless.
Yes, we will see when I'm all old and wrinkly and I've got my gold medal hanging around my neck. But no, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's absolutely brilliant to be here.
And how was your day? What have you been up to? Anything interesting?
What did I do today? I left the house to pick up Ben, my partner, when he came home from work. He works at St Thomas's Hospital. And that was obviously exciting to go outside. I went for a very short paddle because I live near the river, and I take my little dog across in the kayak because the walks are on the other side of the river. So you have to find a way across here. And the river's gone down a lot. River Thames has gone down a lot. And then I went for quite a big walk. I did do some work as well, just in case my many bosses are tuning in.
Fair enough. We believe
writing all day.
Don't worry. That's cool. Well, look, it's super good to have you here. So I think it's really interesting. So you and I, we first spoke last year, although I don't know where that all happened, but you were organising a paddling challenge to support the Samburu Girls Foundation in Kenya.
Yeah.
And I just thought it'd be interesting, to explain to the viewers a little bit about that, because I'd never heard of it until you approached me, and I never got to do it in the end. But it'd be cool to hear about it and find out if you're going to do it again and what the story is behind that whole thing.
Yeah. So last year we so Ben, my partner, and I have an association with the Samburu Girls Foundation in Kenya. can't quite remember how. I think it was through Nimco Ali, who is a campaigner, anti-FGM campaigner on girls and women's rights, FGM being female genital mutilation. And we got involved with Josephine Kilea, Dr. Josephine Kilea in Kenya, who is just an amazing woman. Like Barack Obama has spoken about her. In fact, he did a speech where he said that she gives him hope. Imagine Barack Obama saying that. It's pretty cool. Yeah, name check. So she was a victim of FGM herself, and she left her village. So the Samburu people are it's called a sub-tribe. That's not my phrasing. That's what is in the kind of UN lexicon, and is the way that they're referred to, of the Maasai. And just to sort of think about where that is. And then FGM is endemic, or has been endemic, in villages, Samburu villages. So girls flee. Josephine actually goes and liberates them. She's done like night raids. She's gone into villages and she's taken girls with her to escape FGM. And she set up a school. It's like a boarding school, but it's much more than that. It's where you go and you start your life being free from child marriage, forced marriage, persecution, victims of violence, including FGM. So she's just an incredible woman. COVID has been a complete nightmare, as it has for everyone. But in the Samburu, in Kenya, they announced that all schools had to shut, as they did, in the UK, and everyone had to go back to their villages, which obviously for Samburu girls is a really massive problem. So they go back essentially into the same circumstances that they fled from. And often the situation can be magnified because they're considered outcasts, and there's all sorts of assumptions made about where they've been and what they've been doing. So Josephine and a very small team basically carried on their work. And, they had one guy who was driving miles and miles and miles on a moped to get to the villages, to talk and reason with, the families in the village, just trying to make sure that the girls didn't get sold into marriage. And a lot of villages obviously didn't have any income during this time, so they were seeing the girls as a way of making money. So the whole thing, has been chaotic. And so we decided we were going to raise some money. So we decided that we would do a paddle with Matt Allwright, who I hope will be joining us tonight.
We will see. That's just the people who don't know. Matt Allwright is supposed to be coming, but we're not sure what's going on. So we're kind of carrying on with Lucy, which is awesome to have you here.
Oh, he's on his way. He'll be here. He always turns up like the man from Milk Tray. And he'll probably be wearing a black polo neck as well. But there was 15 of us. And we sort of got this window in between the lockdowns to jump in our kayaks and to borrow some double kayaks from a place in Windsor who were very nice to us. And British Canoeing helped us to organise a 20-mile paddle from Windsor to Hampton Court. So it was 20 miles in 2020. This year, I want to do 21 miles in 2021. I was about to say,
surely you've got to do 21 miles, yeah.
And it will keep going up, until we get to net zero. And I wonder what you think of net zero, actually, but maybe that's a different.
We can come to that, yes. Don't get me started.
Yeah, I knew you'd have something to say about that. So that's what we did. In my kayak, I had Angelica Bell, who is a really good friend of mine. She's a TV presenter, and she does like the Martin Lewis Money Show and loads of different things. It's just Scala Radio. And she's done quite a lot of challenges, those kind of celebrity challenges. So she went to the North Pole, and I remembered that there was one challenge with a kayak, and she was in a kayak with Rav Wilding, and it was like they were paddling through ice, like ice breaking kayaking. So I thought, she'll be great at this. So we get in this kayak in the morning of the challenge, and we do the 20 miles, and she's very like, go faster, like that. I mean, I actually almost.
Were you in the back?
I was in the back because I'm heavier. Oh, yeah. And the steering thing wasn't really working. Anyway, it was a nightmare. It was really exhausting. And by the time we got to the end of it, we had to go through all the locks, like 7 locks and everything. And by the time when we got to the end of it, she goes, "Oh, sorry if I was a bit tense, but I'm absolutely terrified of water."
Really?
But she only told me after 20 miles.
Oh, she put her trust in you. That's pretty cool. And you kept a steady ship, I'm assuming, and
It wasn't very steady.
No.
But anyway, she was amazing, and I hope she does it again. But when Matt arrives, he can tell you about it, but he was the top fundraiser. When we got into the locks, because it was in between the lockdowns, if you remember August last summer, I know it seems a long time ago, there was quite a few mob-happy people on boats, and there was a Women's Institute group from somewhere, Spalding or something, and he chatted them up in the lock, and they were throwing notes at us, some of which were landing in the water. Here he is.
Ah, here he is, the man himself. Well done, Matt. You've made it.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. There was a slight miscalculation on my part.
It's all right. And I like your red earphones, I have to say, you know, they are excellent.
They've been heavily modified, Etienne. That's what they are.
They look like festive. Wow, good for you. Is it okay if I just introduce you to the people? Is that all right, Matt? Because it's great to have you here, and you know this is the first of the new season, so it's really awesome to have Lucy and Matt here joining us today on the Paddlecast. Welcome everybody again, and thank you so much for being here, Matt. Well, it's just so good to have you here. It's really super cool. Matt is, well, basically he's a Watchdog presenter, consumer expert, and I do also believe you are being undertaking a particularly niche area of paddle sports recently, and I thought that would be interesting to kind of hear about that because, well, go on, please tell us a little bit more.
I'm not even sure it is a sport, Etienne. I mean,
is it that cutting edge? Are we talking? It's like it's unclassified.
It's certainly not in the Olympics yet, but it's something that it just happens because at the canoe club, the kayak club that I'm a member of, we get a slot that starts at 7 o'clock in the evening. And of course, in the summer, that's glorious. But then when we get to the winter and we go all year round, we end up paddling. You drop in the night and we come back at night. And I hadn't really worked that out when I joined the club in July, that we'd be night kayaking. And night kayaking is the most just fabulous thing because you are suspended in inky blackness. And just all you can hear is the sound of your paddle as it dips into the water, occasional chat, but not too much, and just the sounds of the riverbank, and you're kind of floating. You're in space because I don't know if I'm sure you've paddled at night, Etienne. You must have done that.
Oh, for sure. But not. Is it a really dark section of river that you get to paddle on? So is it quite like? Yeah,
it's on the Thames, but it's countryside Thames.
I see.
So,
cool. Yeah.
You know, depending on the night, some nights it's moonlit and other nights there's just nothing. The moon is hidden by cloud. And, you know, we all wear lights so we can find each other. But when you're looking out, if you're at the head of the group, you can't see anything.
How far do you go?
I mean, we don't do anything like the distance that we did on our day together, Luce. Because, you know, we maybe make it through locks are limiting at that time of night. You know, you don't want portaging in the middle of the night, really. So, but we can do a good like 12K in a night, something like that. We're quite, you know, we're energetic.
I got a question here from Rebecca Lovat. Hi, Becky. Nice to see you here. She's asking you're famous, Matt, for your preferred Rogue Traders bike. Difficult question. What is it? Kayaking or biking?
I think as I get older,
one's not much use on the river and one's not much use on the road. So
you're absolutely right. Bike in the river.
I saw a guy on a bike board thing the other day. He came past this bit of the Thames.
Really?
He pedals on a bike.
Oh, what, actually cycling on the river?
Yeah, on a board, obviously on a board.
Yeah, I've seen him, yeah.
That's a real
You've seen him, yeah.
Thing. That's a hipster thing.
He doesn't look like a hipster, Matt.
Is he typing on a typewriter as he's doing it? Does he have a handlebar moustache?
He actually looks really pissed off. He's like...
So, no, the answer to that is I've definitely segued into sea kayaks particularly.
Oh, yeah.
There is something about the shape of a sea kayak. That's what first attracted me to the whole thing. It's just the way that the deck is so low and close to the water, and you get that prow. you know, that's so proud, and oh man, and you just feel like a little mini Viking. Got that Nordic cool about it, hasn't it? You know, that's just Eskimo cool, that you just feel like the king of the seas in that thing.
Yeah, so I've been sea kayaking a little bit, and it is something about it. There is something kind of, it's really long in front of you, isn't it? And you kind of make you think like you can just, like the horizon, you just kind of go in. I think it's a really cool thing, really nice design. Yeah. So is that a definitive kayaking versus biking then?
You know, I love biking, but it's noisy and it's, you know, it's not that great. The lovely thing about biking, and I suppose that kayaking has in common with a motorcycle, is the ability. There's a kind of union between your body and a vehicle, you know, and the thing, because a bike's not like a car. You have to move it with your body, with your hips, to make it go around corners. And edging is the same in a kayak. So I suppose maybe there's a little bit of crossover between those.
Yeah,
but
the feeling of swooshing around. That's what it's all about for me, anyway. That's why I love in slalom and all boats actually, when they move around. Lucy, what sort of boat do you paddle? What sort of craft is your kind of medicine?
Mine is a very stable granny's kayak, isn't it, Matt? Because I think Matt had to, for various logistical reasons, he ended up doing quite a few miles in my kayak, and I don't think it was pleasant.
Was it cursing?
It was. I think it was just when the headwind kicked in, and I felt, you know, when you're paddling but you're watching the scenery go backwards. It was just, I was making very little headway in it. But
mine's more of a going. I do go and get the shopping in it. I go to Kingston, which is near here, and then I fill it up with shopping or I used to, you know, when one could do such things. And also I have to put my dog in it, so I want stability.
Also, you do like heroic rubbish clearing.
Yes, I do.
Well. So you need the plastic space as well within the boat.
I need the space.
Yeah.
So is it a messy section of river where you are then, Lucy? Does it get like...
not well. Today there was sort of half a sofa making its way down, and I got quite excited because there's been quite a big seal that's appeared in the last few weeks up here. Have you seen video footage of seals going through the locks, through the portage?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh my God, it's hilarious.
They've learned how to operate the locks.
With their flippers, do they do the sort of the winder?
No, they go through the portage. They go through the portage, but it's very funny. It's just very cool. Anyway, one's come up here, and the other day, about 2 weeks ago, I was on the phone, and the river's out there, so I was like, I'm always looking this way, and I thought I saw a futon at the end, like at the end of the garden, sort of thing, and then I realised it was a seal.
Wow.
I was on the phone. I went, it's a seal. Fortunately, I was talking to someone from the Environment Agency who was also a nature lover, so it's fine. But I do collect plastic, and recently, because Hampton Court Palace has been closed and the sweet shops around the place have been closed, there's just no litter like there usually is. And it's not that people chuck it in, it's that the bins overspill and it rolls and it blows in, and it just ends up in the river.
So you've noticed a big difference then during the pandemic to the sort of water quality, the cleanliness of the river?
Here, I've noticed a big difference. Yeah, I really have. Because when it's busy, and it's crazy busy in the summer, and the flower show is on, and then there's a food show and stuff like that. Yeah, you really notice. And there's lots more boats chugging about. And this last 12 months has been pretty quiet. Well, there was a period last summer, it was like Love Island, because everyone came to the Thames because they couldn't go away. I saw some sights. And people would go out and paddle boards in the morning when it's sunny in very skimpy wear, and then they would come back at night when it was quite cold, it just didn't work as well. So we had great fun watching this. But yeah, the quantity of rubbish has been noticeably less, the quantity of so-called litter, and it is just really, like I say, symptomatic of volume. Too much plastic bottles, and actually, I was in Hampton Court Park, Home Park, the other week, and we noticed that where the tents are for the flower show is full of tiny bits of microplastics from
amazing,
flower pots, from sheeting. And bear in mind, there was no flower show last year. So that's from 2 years ago. So these events have got to go plastic free. They've just got to, because there's a lot of wildlife over there. There's kestrels, there's skylarks, there's, you know, lots of different things. And they've got to turn that plastic free. So that's another hobby horse that I'm going to.
That you're going to be at their door. Get on it.
I am.
So Matt, I know that you're, you know, well, you're very much associated with this kind of consumer side of things. Where do you stand on kind of access and sustainability and environmentalism with you? I mean, I guess you seem to know Lucy quite well. Has any of this kind of passion rubbed off on you? And I'm interested about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm a massive admirer of Lucy's, because I think that, you know, I kind of, we're mates as well. You know, I have to say that. Full disclosure.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. But you know, the flip side.
You should have heard what she said about you when you weren't here on time.
Well, I'll play that back. You know,
it was off air.
It's all evidence.
Is that right? Okay. No, duly noted. But no, I think they're kind of they're two ends of the same thing. So I'm looking at what people buy with a view to them getting a good deal. But value for money really is so linked to what we end up doing with stuff at the end of it. So if you buy well in the first place, it's typically something that endures. You know, clothing is the really obvious example of this.
This is one of Lucy's big things as well, right? So
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And you look at the process by which we buy clothing, and I'm really conscious of that, like outdoor clothing, like kit for kayaking. Let's take that as a classic example. If you buy cheap, then it won't last, and then you get rid of it, and then it's part of that. What the hell do I do with this process that you go through? And you know, getting stuff that endures and is of quality, they're kind of two sides of the same thing, really. Getting a good deal and then looking after the planet are intrinsically linked, I think. And the sooner we see the quality of things and understand what makes a quality piece of clothing, piece of kit, whatever it is, a product, then the sooner I think we'll be happier, and we'll hold on to stuff longer, and we'll buy less, and it won't end up as rubbish.
Because there's some interesting thing here as well. Lucy, I know that you're really interested in this idea of circular economy, and this is one of the ideas where, you know, nothing ever goes to waste. It's just round. But the other thing that I think is really interesting about these ideas is that you borrow. You don't have things of your own. You borrow them and you keep them until you need them, and someone else takes them back. And I'm wondering, there's so much about canoeing equipment, kayaking equipment, boats, and all those sorts of things. I wonder if we could do that sort of thing, but I don't know if everyone knows what, you know. It'd be nice. Can you talk a little bit about that circular economy? That would be really cool.
Yeah, well, the circular economy. So basically, we live in a linear economy and a linear society. So everything, we take resources from the earth. So we take about 100 billion tons of resources from the earth each year globally, and 80 to 90% of those resources ends up as pollution. So in the form of atmospheric pollution, carbon dioxide, or held almost like landfill in the sea, which is what happens to plastic. So that's incredibly, not only just wasteful, and this whole kind of idea that the earth is there just so we can rape and pillage, you know, it's just a really odd idea. And of course, that puts strain on the biosphere because it can't regenerate. And that means that our life-sustaining services are compromised. And so take, make and waste, which is a linear system, is causing huge environmental destruction. And it's also a very stupid way of making stuff. So circular economy is the opposite of that. And you take a resource and you keep it in circulation. So you can do that in lots of different ways. Some materials can be regenerated because some are circular. I've got an aluminium can here, which is a more circular material. Plastic, I don't believe there's any evidence for plastic being a circular material. So I think that we should turn the tap off. So we need to produce less plastic. So reuse, repair, all the sharing economy stuff is all really, really important in keeping those resources in circulation and extending their lifespan. And when we look, and there's been quite a lot of modelling that's been done on circular economy, and the gains are just fantastic. There's massive carbon gains. So if you look at renewable energy giving 55% or delivering like 55% of the cuts that's needed to get to the Paris totals, Paris Agreement, 45% could be done through circular economy. And it's not like a button. You can't turn it, you can't switch it off overnight, but we're starting to see more and more stuff going in that direction. So last week, the UK brought in a repair law. Matt may know.
Yeah,
more
right
about
to repair
this.
law.
Right to
look,
repair.
Matt's,
Yeah. And I got excited.
It's really exciting, because building in to the contract of your sale the idea that this thing not only has a reasonable lifespan, but also when that lifespan, any part of that goes, the manufacturer has to provide parts so that you can repair it yourself. And I don't know about you, Luce, but during lockdown, I've repaired so many things because I've had the time and there are the resources out there. I repaired my dishwasher, 4 different parts of my dishwasher before I realized it was just.
Did you feel, you must have felt like the guy there after doing that?
Empowered. So empowered. Just feeling like, do you know what? The other thing that's out there is there are so many resources online to show you how to do this stuff now, and they break it down and they make it simple to understand, and you realize that it's not that difficult. So, I am not a practical person in that sense at all, well, I'm getting better. I'm getting better, but I'm not the practical one in my family, if that makes sense.
Well, you don't need to be if you've got someone else practical. You just get them in to help you, don't you?
That's it.
But sometimes it's nice to stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah.
And go, I repaired something too.
There are so many things that I've just taken the time to put back together, and watching them work again is fabulous.
I repaired my Hoover.
Did you?
Well, I just got some new parts for it.
Yeah, but that's it. That's as long as the parts are available. I did the same thing, and it's like I used to send this off and they'd send me back a new one, and where's the waste in that? I think it's fascinating what you're saying. I think there's another part of the equation that we haven't addressed yet, and that is about the tremendous illusion of choice that we are presented with at the front end of purchases. When I don't know about you, Etienne, I spend hours agonizing over like minutiae of each purchasing decision based on, like tiny fragmental decisions about, will this be slightly better than this? And I can spend whole days considering things like the length of a paddle. Okay. It's crucial. Or do I want it to be a cranked shaft? Or
these are really important decisions for an Olympian.
I've never heard of these things.
A 4-piece or a 2-piece, and you spend ages thinking about these. At the end of the day, it's going to make no difference at all. The thing that's going to make the difference on the day is whether it's raining and it's out of your control. That's how much you're going to enjoy your paddle. So you just stop agonizing, spending days over purchasing decision when actually we are being presented with more and more illusion of choice.
But do you not enjoy that then? Do you feel trapped into making these decisions? Is that not part of your process?
I'm spending more time thinking about that than I am about the paddle, about the experience itself, and that's the thing that worries me.
Here's a good one. Interesting. Do you know what this is? A Greenland paddle. Have you guys come across that? So this is sort of, it's like a stick. I came across this a few years ago. I never even blew my mind. I don't know, some of the people watching might not know. It's basically like a little stick, and you use it to paddle, and it's incredible techniques. So it's a specific kind of I guess it's an indigenous technique from when sea kayaking was originally invented, but it's really clever. And I even came across a carbon one, which I thought was quite an interesting one. And it's very cool.
What does it kind of do in a sense? Like,
Matt,
what
do you
does
want
it
to come in?
enable you to do?
Yeah, so it's an Inuit design, and it looks like 2 flattened baseball bats joined together in the middle, and it looks completely impractical because you haven't got the blade size that you'd have with something.
He's got them all there. He's got them lined up.
Okay, see, that's got a big blade on it. There, look at that. I'm not being sponsored. Whereas an Inuit paddle looks like flattened baseball bats, and you would think, well, I'm not going to make any headway with that at all. But because it's typically made of wood or some kind of buoyant, I suppose this is how it works, some kind of buoyant like carbon shell, then you get the buoyancy with it. And so it makes things like rolling a lot easier.
And if we're using the wind, that's the thing. So it's like when you're in those really cold, windy places, the other half of your paddle catches the wind. And so these are used for basically paddling in really windy conditions. And you can actually, you shuffle your hands up one side and the other. And it's some really, it's like, yeah, when I saw it, I was like, you could never, and I had to go with it. And that's actually, oh yeah, you can see they were thinking, they were clever. And it's really,
shuffle your hands up.
So you actually hold the paddle really short. They're only not very much shorter than a normal length paddle. And you hold the end of the paddle with your hand in the middle, and then you paddle it along like that. And then you switch your hand to the other end. So you've never got the longest end of your paddle going through against the wind. So you've never got like a stub against the wind.
That is clever.
So it's really
a lot more relaxing as well to paddle, because there's a lot less resistance in the water. So you haven't got a big blade to try and, manipulate in the water as well. So
maybe we should do our 21 miles for 2021. Maybe we should use these.
Have a practice first, and then
the weather last year we could have done with some wind resistant.
It was tropical. It was monsoon. It was
awful
as well.
It was freezing.
So this is a question that I heard you talking about earlier. You said you think the rain is the thing that determines whether you enjoy your paddling. But I love paddling in the rain. I just hate paddling in the wind. I think actually paddling at night in the rain on a still night, and it's all like, I think that's a beautiful thing. I love paddling in the rain, because when you've got your gear on, everyone else is miserably kind of, oh, it's raining, and you're like, I'm totally fine. And when it's not, I love it. I love paddling in the rain on a calm night.
I was the only one with the spray deck, Etienne, so that made a big difference.
I see. Yeah,
like warm legs. That's hard.
What, when you were out at night?
No,
or when you did ours? Oh yeah. And you're the only one with a beret as well.
Thank you very much.
Look good.
So here's a good question coming in on the chat here. Go on, okay. Lucy. First of all, go on.
Just before we finish the repair chat, I'm getting the impression that there's a lot of kit, like clothing kit, if you're doing this properly, which I don't, because I just wear my jeans. But what I would say is it's a bit like skiing. If you've got a specialist sport and you should mend your kit as well. And there's a really good website called Repair What You Wear. And it's a woman called Roz, who's been a textiles tutor for like 30 years. And she's brilliant at explaining how to do secret stitching, darning like on difficult fabrics, because a lot of technical fabrics are really hard to mend. So make sure you mend it. But also, if you're doing like swapping, clothes swapping is really, really important as part of circular economy. If you're part of a sports group, you've got the perfect base to swap clothes with, whether it's in a club or whether it's online or whatever. But that's what lots of skiers do. And the whole kind of clothes rental swapping thing really did start with ski wear and specialist sports apparel. So please.
Yeah, so this is interesting. It relates really well to this question. So Andrew Green here is coming up with a question, and it's a thorny one. And I just thought I'd punt it out there, because it's like, so should we be moving away from plastic kayaks or recycle kayaks? And so I'm one of the things that I hear a lot, and I sort of struggle with it myself. I actually think, you're right. I believe, Lucy, that plastic, you're basically downcycling it each time you recycle it. But I think like plastic is a remarkable material. It's super useful. It revolutionized kayaking and canoeing, and it's done so much good for all sorts of things. One of the big problems is that we just get rid of it. But actually kayaks, a plastic kayak, the ones, I see run down the canal, I see plastic kayaks from literally 30 years ago when I was, 20 years ago when I was starting, and they're still going. They'd probably be more or less fine. And I think it's a really interesting to think how we could change kayak. I mean, we had some kayak manufacturers on in the last series, and it's a complex challenge, but I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, because it's a bit of a tricky business.
Well, there is a guy, I can't remember his name, down in Plymouth, or maybe even down into Cornwall, but he makes kayaks from ocean plastic. So, like ghost gear, like the fishing nets that are dumped at sea, 640,000 every year. And they can, divers obviously retrieve it. And that can be made into stuff. And he does kayaks from that. I did want one of those, but there was quite a long wait time at the time. And I think I agree with you. Like, so where I'm talking about turning the tap off with plastics, some plastics are, like genuinely life-saving. I don't want a wooden heart valve if a plastic one will do the job. And I think as a society, we need to say, yeah, this is what we're going to use plastics for. This is not. And I think like kayaks and canoes, I think are a really good use of them.
There's also that trade-off. I mean, I wouldn't have a kayak if there wasn't a plastic one, because I wasn't about to get into kayaking by spending like 1,500 quid on something that I just couldn't do that you've got to have access. And what that's doing, a plastic kayak is giving people access to the river where they see what's happening in the river. They are then partially responsible for what's happening in the river. And like we do, you start noticing changes in it as well. And I think something like that's going to last, 15, 20 years, be regularly used, is going to give people a window onto things for which they have to take responsibility, if that makes sense. So
that nature connection, that's one of the things we keep coming back to over and over and over again. It's like this sense of stewardship and connection and ownership. If you know something and you value it, you get that out there. And I think that's what I was going to ask both of you, because I suppose you've both come to paddling. I don't know how long you've been paddling for, but how has it changed your perspective on life? Because I've been a kayaker since I was 11 something, it's most of my life, and I hope I will be forever. But has it changed your perspective on either yourself or the world, other people? I don't know. How does that sound as a question? It could be quite deep philosophical question.
Yeah, it's a nice question. I first learned to kayak when I was a teenager, and I grew up partly in Ireland and moved back to England, and then I went on holiday with my friends in Ireland with their family, and there was like 15 or 16 of us staying in West Cork. A lot of us were teenagers, and my friend's dad had the brilliant idea of getting us out of bed really early every morning and booking a kayak instructor so that we couldn't like just be annoying and naughty all day. We had to get in this kayak, and I remember crying, swearing, screaming, having all the strops. And then just one day, maybe about 6 days in, I just loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And we were on the Atlantic side, and there's a weird place there where fresh water meets salt water, and there's a sort of nature reserve. It's a sort of like mini Jaya thing. It's like incredible. And so for me, it was the first time that I could see like what was going on with the ocean, and that immediately was like I was into ocean currents and what was happening. It was a whole new world. It's like when I've heard people talk about the first time they went diving and they see like what's beneath the surface. For me, that was a kayak, because I'd never got out in the water before. I wasn't a very good swimmer. Boats make me seasick, and that was it. I just had access to water.
And we want that. I mean, this is again one of British Canoeing's. This used to be called the Clear Access, Clear Waters podcast. Because we want it. We're really trying to get this, because it's absolutely scandalous, really, how little people are allowed to go on the water. What about you, Matt? How has kayaking changed your life?
I've always been very nervous in water. I'm not a terribly strong swimmer at all, and it was always felt off limits. Yeah. And I think there's a combination there. When you're in a kayak, you are responsible for your own. You can power yourself, and I think as a kid, that's incredibly like liberating. And you suddenly think, I can get places, and it's just going to be me. I'm responsible for this. It's got to go right. That in itself is amazing. But also now, as you start being part of the paddling community, and you start seeing the veins that run through the country, that you could go on those, and you could go from one place that to another place by a route that nobody else is going to be taking. Then it starts to get really magical, and that sense of adventure of seeing places on the map, and you're going by a road that very few other people are going to take, and you're going to see things that other people don't see, then again, that has that sort of really inspiring feel of covering distance and, you know, being responsible for yourself while you're doing it as well. You never lose that. I think that's that childlike sense of being able to do that.
It's cool. I'm going to do a shameless plug actually right now, because I'm involved in something called a Save Outdoor Education campaign, because this is one of the things about outdoors. It makes people feel like they are actually able to be, you know, have some agency in life. You know, they can. I believe it gave me a huge amount of confidence to know you're not just going to melt in a rainy day, and you're not going to die if you go out. You know, if you go out walking somewhere, you're not going to get lost. You can work something out with you and your buddies, whatever. And outdoor education, I think, is hugely important. I got mine in Scouts with my awesome Scout leaders, but I think that's just something that's suffered. So I want to do a big shout out. There's a lot going on that right now. So check that out. I think it's called a Safe Outdoor Education campaign and a Save Outdoor Education campaign. And yeah, just say, because it sounds to me like, you know, it's super cool to have people like you who are, you know, in the public eye known as, you know, canoeist, kayak enthusiasts, because I believe canoeing, kayaking, paddle sports, stand-up paddleboarding, whatever, are just such good sports to be able to get out there. And I think I was going to ask, go on, Matt, go on.
I just think there's so many great lessons to learn from it as well, especially for kids who maybe reject like traditional team sports and things like that, and feel like, you know, a lot of kids feel like I have no place in outdoor activities because I don't play team sport. This is something that just takes you away from all of that. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be competitive, but you're gaining so much, learning about how your body works, about balance, about nature. I just honestly, I wish I had time to do more of it, because I'm learning lessons still, and I'm, you know, 51 going out there. And doing it.
Well, paddle sports are really gentle on your body as well, I think, generally speaking. So my ambition, you know, if indeed the planet lasts that long, I would like to be paddling long into my old age. There's some really inspiring older kayakers down in Nottingham who kayaking, and they look to be having a wicked time. And that's what I want to do. And I'm hoping I can do it, because I actually think you can, there's so much to learn. And there's a whole sort of side to kayaking and canoeing and paddle sports, I think, that is, you know, in your mind, and about those kind of experiences of calm and those moments where I went out just the other day on the river here. It was the first really sunny day. It was super calm day, sunny. The water was actually really cold, and I could almost like, this is just a beauty. You know, it was just, you know, it's like, it was wonderful. And I think that's just a nice thing that we don't, you know, it's just like you appreciate things that you never would normally appreciate, I think. So I think that's really good. Oh, I'm just seeing something else here. We're getting a lot of talk about surfers against sewage. And I'm wondering, because I know, Lucy, you are connected strongly with Surfers Against Sewage. And I think that is something that, you know, we had Hugo Tagholm on the last series. He was super interesting. It's a really powerful campaign as well.
Yeah. So Surfers Against Sewage are, well, if you don't know them, they're a Cornish environmental charity, and they were set up, as the name suggests, because surfers like Chris Hines, who set it up, who was one of the people who set it up, they got really bored of surfing and finding a turd basically pressed into their chest on their surfboard, because that was the state of the sea 30 years ago when they set it up. Since then, they had a lot of success getting water companies to take responsibility for stuff like sewage, but there's still massive battles in water quality. And we still have, I remember one of the big surfing championships at Watergate Bay a few years ago was held, and because they don't have to declare it, nobody realized that there had been a kind of sewage outflow thing. Like when there's really heavy rain, because of our Victorian system, they still like release sewage into the water, and they don't have to tell you. So Surfers Against Sewage has evolved into quite a sophisticated, still run out of Cornwall, still very grassroots, but quite a sophisticated environmental organisation, does loads on plastic, has the plastic-free awards and stuff like that. But they know the right tools for the right activism. So as Hugo says, sometimes he puts on a suit and speaks nicely in Westminster and to the all-party parliamentary on ocean health, and sometimes he wears his wetsuit and they have inflatable turds and they parade them round, you know, and annoy politicians. So it's about selecting the right activism tool, and I think they just do that so brilliantly. They really do. I learned so much from them.
Well, there's the next week. We're going to get involved with that a little bit, and I think it'd be really interesting to hear some more. And I suppose we're starting to come towards the end of the show, and I'm just wondering, Matt or Lucy, is there anything that you'd like to kind of just talk about before we kind of start to wrap up? Because I think it's really great if you're here. I'll bring in some comments here. What's it? So, hi Matt, thank you for endorsing night paddling. Yes. What kayaking challenge are you going to do?
This is my friend Brian. This is my guru.
Is he a ringer?
Right. Well, Brian is the man that is the guy that just leads me on, and he's always the front of the pack and trying to race me effectively. But honestly, if it wasn't for Brian and the crew down at my kayak club, I'm just learning so much. And yes, Brian, I'm up. We are going to be going to the Isle of Wight. We're going to do that as soon as possible. It's good, man.
Cool. What about you, Lucy? Have you got anything?
Well, yeah, I mean, we need to do another fundraiser for Sambura. Would Brian like to join that? Matt?
Well, I'd say Brian will be there and back by the time that we're sort of like halfway.
But that's okay. We can have a fast group. Etienne, you can do it this year. You couldn't do it last year because you were doing climate activism.
Well, I will be fast because I've been on the flat water a lot over the lockdown. I've been on my river. I've not been doing much white water kayaking, but I reckon I'm probably reasonably swift on the flat water right now.
Well, there's a challenge for myself and Angelica because we're pretty fast in our double.
Oh, all right, okay. Here's another thing that's just coming back onto the plastic fathoms free based in Cornwall. I'm going to have a look at that. That sounds really interesting.
I couldn't remember the name. Can't remember anything at the moment.
Oh, and here's another interesting one. You see, it gets complicated. We've got these conversations are really interesting. So wooden boats, sanding them all down, the dust, and then the VOC. I think that stands for volatile organic compounds. So I learned about this when I was doing engineering. There's not all that simple answers, but I guess we've got to really think about these things, and at some point, we just got to get hold of some of this and try and get some sensible answers out.
Well, I mean, there are so many plastic boats out there not being used. That's the key, isn't it? If they're not being used, pass them on so somebody can give them the maximum number of uses for their lifetime, and make sure they're out there being used. That's the key.
Well, look, I think we could wrap it up there if you wanted to, unless there's anything one last anything anyone.
What can we say? What should we say, Matt?
I just can't wait for the breadboards to come down and get back on the water. Honestly, it's just I hope this summer is going to be, as relaxed as it can be, so we can just make the most of it again.
I want you to make a documentary about being a lock keeper.
Oh, I'd love to be a lock keeper. I think
you should be a lock keeper for a week.
Oh, that would be amazing. These guys are brilliant. They've seen everything.
And your trained seal that helps you to do it. There you go. Get Chris Packham in or something like that to help along.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, look, both of you, I want to just say I'm so grateful. Just seen Brian Roberts' message. Of course, I am up for it. That's it. Full stop. Job done.
Amazing.
He'll be there.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, Lucy, please get me the date as well, and I'll see if I can be around.
We need to set a date, and I hope that people. We'd like to make it bigger this year if the rules allow. So please look out because British Canoeing will help us. I'm sure and tell you when it is.
And there's the last word to Pam Phillips. I started kayaking at 65. I'm now addicted, never too old to join our wonderful sport. So thank you very much, Pam. And look, I want to say thank you so much to Lucy and Matt for being here. I want to say thank you to everybody who's been viewing, everyone who's listening again on Facebook, YouTube. Remember, you can get all of this on a podcast that on your usual places. It will be super cool if you can get involved with that. Please come again to the next Paddlecast editions. But Lucy and Matt, I don't know, I'm just so grateful for you being here. I'm so grateful that you are advocating and out there proudly being canoeists and kayakers. Thank you for being here. And
thanks for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
And maybe see you in the summer. Yes, indeed, when times are good. Stay safe, everybody, and look after yourself. And we will see you again next week, same time, 7 p.m. all over the place. Get on it. Thank you so much. All right. Bye for now.